Welcome back. So we're in this process of Imagine, and we're capturing it over here. Be sure to watch how this is changing. I'm now going to introduce Dave Biegger of Campbell's, and before I do, I want to tell you a story. So the work on the supply chain index has actually taken us about 2 years. And when we had done the work from 2006 to 2012, I called up Dave and I said, I'd like to interview you because you are driving a faster rate of improvement than your peer group. And it took us a while to arrange the meeting, but then I went to talk to him and he said, oh, I'm not sure 2013 is going to be so good, Laura. And, let me tell you about that. And I said, that is why I would love to have you come and talk at my conference because often we drive improvement, but then maybe we make a step backwards, and I want Dave to tell you the story. So Dave has a long legacy with Procter & Gamble, has really done a lot of work around driving reliability and organization reliability. And Campbell's is, of course, a very complex supply chain in food and beverage, facing a lot of resiliency issues around commodity pricing. He's also going to talk to you a little bit about how he's a cheesehead, so I'll let him tell you that directly. Welcome, Dave, to the stage. Dave Biegger, Campbell's. Real food that matters in life's
I'll talk
moments.
about that. Right.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I got to find my clicker. There we go. Okay, well, good morning, everybody. And first want to thank Laura for inviting me to come here. I told her when she invited me that, I think we all tend to probably get invitations for different things like this, but I usually say no because it's not something that really is of huge interest for me to go out and do. But I had a relationship with her from the past. She's been really helpful to me and to Campbell's as we've asked her for some guidance in the past. And I also, wanted to see what I could do to help. And when she asked me, she said, you can either talk about the supply chain index or you can be the artist. And I chose the supply chain index, but I think it would have been more entertaining if I would have done that. So just a little bit of background. I guess that is not the right. Oh, wait, sorry. Wait. Okay. So, all right, now I'm on the right thing. Sorry. So, my background really quickly is, I'm from Iowa. I went to Iowa State University, got a chemical engineering degree there. I did spend 24 years at P&G and then my last 10 years at Campbell's. And my most recent role is heading up the global supply chain. And I wanted to at least say something personal about me. I could have talked about my family, and I do care about my family a lot. But I thought this would be more fun, and I don't know where the kind of folksy you Packers go thing came from. Somebody helped put that in there. But I am a big Packers fan, and I put this up here even though last Thursday wasn't a good day for the Packers. Congratulations. Any Seahawks fans here? Yeah? Okay, well, good job. And, good. Any Packers fans here? See, there's a bunch of them. Okay, well, wait, where's my Wisconsin guy? Did you raise your hand on the Packer fan thing? You're a fair weather. I asked him if he was a Packer fan, and he hesitated the first time. So, but what I'm going to do is do a little bit of background on the company like we all would do. I'll try to go fast through that so I can save time to talk about some of the insights or learnings we've had. The Campbell's is headquartered in Camden, New Jersey, near Philadelphia. We have about 20,000 people. You can see $8 billion in sales. So we're not a huge company. We're not a little company. It's been a good experience for me. I've worked for 2 great companies now. We have very strong brands, number 1 type brands in most of the areas we play. Obviously a big market leader in soup, and we're in a lot of countries, and we're really focused on innovation. So the last point there is we've been busy launching new products. And most people know Campbell as this. This is the Andy Warhol painting of the Campbell's soup tomato soup can. But this is a better representation of our brands. So not only Campbell's, but and a lot of people wouldn't know this, but Swanson, V8 Beverage, Pepperidge Farm, Bolthouse Farms we just acquired a little over a year ago. Pace, which is salsa, and Arnott's is a huge brand down in Australia and Asia Pacific area. Prego, and then Plum Organics is a baby food company we just bought, and Kelson's is a Danish cookie company we bought recently. And this next picture just shows some of our products, and you've seen a lot of these, but you'll see things like Goldfish and Milano in there from Pepperidge Farm. Down in the bottom right-hand corner, I don't know how many people have had a Tim Tam before. Oh, really? Aren't they the best things ever? They're down in Australia. You can't get them up here. If you ever get a chance to eat a Tim Tam, you ought to do that. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this other to say we've been around for a long time. Actually, first got founded more as a canning company, and then Dr. John Dorrance came in and developed the formula for condensed soup, and then that was on tomato, and eventually we hit 30 years later got a chicken noodle. But you can see the other kind of acquisitions of some of those brands and companies I've talked about. I did throw Godiva up there because a lot of people are always surprised. Campbell's owned Godiva for 40 years, and we divested Godiva about 6 years ago. And you can see the last three on there are acquisitions we've made recently. And so here's some fun facts just to have some fun. So we make a lot of cans of soup. So if we set them end to end, you can see we encircled the equator 17 times in 1 year's worth of production. We make lots of stars in our chicken and star soup. You can see more than in 3 years we make the number of stars in the Milky Way. And I don't know why we have this one here, but Andy Warhol ate tomato soup every day for 20 years, which is, he was weird, and that's kind of weird, right? But we would appreciate it if you would all do the same thing. So, and then I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. We have a new purpose. It's real food that matters for life's moments. That means a lot to us and won't to you, obviously. But if you look at the 3 bullet points, the supply chain plays a big role in that. The first point is more broad, but when you look at food should be good, delicious, and it's accessible, that's quality. It's getting to the right place at the right cost. That's us. And then the last point is really about people and about sustainability, and of course supply chain plays a big role there. I have a really quick video that gives a little picture of the company, then I'll move on to the supply chain index.
The Campbell's family of brands are a part of every meal, for every kind of family, in just about every neighborhood. What bonds us together and makes us the choice for people all over the world are 3 core beliefs. We believe in the power of food to connect people. We believe food should be good, delicious, and affordable. And we believe that we have a duty to our planet, our communities, and our employees. These beliefs come from the innovators who founded our brands. They represent our history, and they'll guide us as we look to the future. These beliefs are what set us apart from other food companies, and they lead us to our purpose: real food that matters for life's moments. We're driven to get real food made with real ingredients that we can all feel good about, from the farm to the table. And as the pace of life is quickened, our family of brands remains steadfast in doing just that. For the families, friends, and real people of every age who trust our ingredients and love the real food that they create. It's our aim to grow, harvest, and prepare our foods in a way that protects the earth and the natural resources we all share, because that allows us to continue to make great food and drinks, and because we've always felt a sense of duty to all the communities we live and work in, as well as to the employees who push our brands to new and great heights every day. No matter the setting, our foods and drinks nourish our bodies, souls, and the relationships we have with family and friends. Every product we make encourages people to pause, savor, and enjoy life's moments and live them a little more richly. Our purpose is our guide in a changing world. It's a bridge that reminds us of our rich history and also connects us to the values of new generations of consumers. Campbell's. Real food that matters for life's moments.
Okay, so now I move on to just a little bit. Our supply chain is end-to-end, so one of the themes that Laura talked about was end-to-end. And it's interesting, some of the themes she talked about. End-to-end, yes, we're an end-to-end supply chain. It starts with agriculture and goes through all the disciplines you can see there, plus some others that I didn't list there, but is very holistic in how we do that. And I think it has made a difference in breaking down some of the barriers across the supply chain. We're moving more into, which I won't get into today, but how do we work end-to-end more broadly outside of the supply chain because of all the loss that occurs across other functions too. this just shows, this is not where we sell products because we're in a lot of countries where we sell, but we are heavily concentrated in North America with Pepperidge Farm and Campbell's being, the Campbell's brand being the primary. We do have the Danish cookie maker in Europe. We did have a lot of plants in Europe up until a few years ago, but we divested all that. And then we have a good presence down in Australia and Southeast Asia. This is the supply chain index that Laura has not shown you yet. When she showed it to me, I'm like a lot of supply chain people. I said, well, I don't know if I believe it, and I would like to understand what it's about. But this is not about who's the best supply chain at all. This is about who's made the most improvements. So, and I wouldn't stand up here and say we're the best supply chain at all because we know we have a long ways to go. The thing that is interesting about it is that period from 2006 to 2012, we did make a ton of progress, and we made them across every result area, many result areas that are not in the index. So in a way, I felt like, okay, that's possible because we set records every year through that whole period. And I did tell her when I saw it, I said, when you see it next year, we're going to drop because of multiple reasons, and I can tell you why, and I'll do that at the end. And we did drop. A little bit of background, I'll do this very quickly, but when I came to Campbell's 10 years ago, in the first couple of years, it was to figure out, where we're going to go. And I had a predecessor that also came 1 year before me in my current role. And together we worked on, with the rest of the team, on some of the things we've done. But, we really did have great people and a great culture to start with, and very technically capable, and lots of pride, which is a great thing to start with. But we were very fragmented, decentralized, very complex. I'm going to show you an example of that, and not standard. And, so we were in a turnaround at the time, so the CEO was bringing in new leadership, which is why some of us came in. But the other point about, and we did a lot of external benchmarking, and not just with food companies. We looked at who are the best of the best and how can we close that gap. But a big focus was on getting the right kind of talent and leadership, which is, I think, where all of us try to start. If you don't have the right kind of leadership, you're not going to make the kind of progress you want to make. Oh, it went backwards again. Sorry about that. So we tried to simplify. Instead of an 80-page strat plan and all that, we went down to a 1-page, and this is a high-level look at it, but we looked at 3 major goal areas with 5 strategy areas, and we've kind of maintained that as a constancy of focus for us. So the first one is support growth and innovation while achieving flat to declining total delivered cost. How do you do both those at the same time? Transform the supply chain to become demand-driven, and then drive the fundamentals. And our strategy areas are win versus competition, which is a lot about cost for supply chain. I'm talking about a supply chain perspective here. Win with consumers, which was quality and innovation. Win with customers, and that was more about flexibility and agility and relationships, obviously. And then, of course, supply chain is about people, and win with our communities, which included sustainability. And we did what everybody typically does, so it's a little bit boring, but if you don't do this part, it doesn't work. Strengthen the foundation, safety, quality, service, reliability. We spent a lot of time on those at the beginning. And then we tried to approach things differently to change the culture, which is really putting processes in place, standardizing, and working as one instead of silos. And here's an example of working as a network. We didn't have this kind of approach. Many of you do this, a pillar type approach. You might have different pillars, but the idea is, what are the pillars? Who are the owners? What are the priorities within each one? Who are the owners of those priorities? And how do you connect them across the globe? And so we've created those network teams that help us drive great improvements in our foundation. And then one of the things I think that helped drive some of the results in the index is we really focused on total delivered cost, or you could call it, broader margin management, however you want to look at it. But we weren't doing that. We were too individualistic. We were making decisions in one area at the expense of another. So we did roll this out. We set very aspirational goals because we were increasing in cost every year. We wanted to be flat to declining. We educated not only supply chain, but the entire company, including the CEO, who got behind it, and it became one of the pillars of the company or the corporate goals. And of course, we had to provide the normal type of tools, but in the next page, I'm going to show you that wasn't enough. Just doing continuous improvement isn't enough. And there was a lot of behavior and mindset changing to go on to make this happen. I have a more fun kind of picture. It's a cube and it moves and all that, but I try to keep it simple for this so I could go fast. But the simple way that we looked at this is we created basically a formula. And the formula said, for us, we needed to drive 50% of our savings through base continuous improvement type things, so Kaizens and value stream mapping are all the tools you all use. But 50% needed to come through breakthrough, big ideas, and we had to cascade those so that each year we had one or two of those popping up, or we couldn't achieve the goal we had, which was to offset inflation. And one of the things, the way we define this kind of savings is one-time type savings don't count because they don't offset inflation if they're one-time. We like one-time savings, but they don't count. Avoidance doesn't count, even though that's a good thing. What counts is repetitive savings that are systemic and built in for the long run. So we looked at what are the streams that we're going to manage that. Of course, manufacturing and logistics you would expect, and also product design, which to me, another way to say that is packaging and ingredients. The problem we had, or we still have, or the challenge we have is roughly two-thirds of our costs are in the product, and a third are in the other two, manufacturing and logistics. But we drive two-thirds of our savings out of that one-third of the cost structure in the first two buckets. And it has to work that way because we can't be messing with the product to that degree all the time. So how do you drive huge savings out of manufacturing and logistics each year? We try to drive 5 to 6% of savings 5 to 6% savings as a percent of spending, and maybe about 2% out of product design. When you do the formula and you multiply those all together, you end up getting to a number that generally offsets inflation. The other key point on this little slide is that the ownership is important. So ownership in the first two buckets is pretty clear. The problem we had earlier in product design, the product design slice, was that we had R&D and procurement basically owning that, and that does not work. The only way it works is to have the business own it and the general managers own it. So we made a change to build that into objectives to the business teams, and then had product development and procurement and the rest of the supply chain all helping and being part of the team, but we had to have ownership in the business, and that changed the level of savings we were able to drive. So with that, we improved our results and costs, and I'll show that in a second. As we got that in place and made big progress, we really wanted to start working on how do we become more demand-driven. And I did, as I mentioned, worked with Laura a little bit on that. I had a lot of experience at P&G. I happened to work in P&G both in a very capital-intensive business, which was a paper business, where you had to run like 98% efficiency to make any money. So I had a lot of that background, but also background in the liquid laundry business, which was the lead for P&G in produce-to-demand and demand-driven principles and concepts. And we tried to marry those two up at Campbell's by putting the foundation in first from a reliability standpoint, but building it in a way that we could drive flexibility and agility. And there was a huge opportunity at Campbell's because our inventory was high and still is way too high. And but we were also very complex. And I'm going to show you an example of how we attacked that in a second. And it was very countercultural. So as we started driving these concepts into our operations, everybody here knows to do this, you've got to build some flexibility, but you also have to change mindset. We started cycling faster, which, very traditional thinkers said that we're going to lose money by doing that. We actually made more money. We actually drove better improvement in service, which is also counterintuitive to people, that when you start taking inventory down, your service goes up. It worked exactly how it should because we were cycling and we were responding better. And people started to learn that it created more freedom, and I think people really engaged in this idea. And it is a journey. So to me, the big point on becoming demand-driven, at least in my mind, from what I saw at P&G and what I've seen at Campbell's, and the operation at P&G was really incredible. And I could talk about that for an hour. But what I saw was hugely advanced in these concepts, but the mentality was, how do we get the next little tiny step? And by doing that, it drove great ingenuity, great creativity into the organization. And that, to me, is one of the big values of, if we can ingrain this in our teams, it'll open new doors that we can't see right now. When we go down this path and we find some opportunities, as people think that way and start implementing it, it opens up new opportunities that they would have never seen if we didn't get that far down the path in the first place. So I really love the idea of doing this, as long as we get the culture change and we get people on board. And so we've made good progress. We're nowhere near where we need to be. And I'll say on this little cylinder here, my view was we needed to really work on that center section first. If we were going to go ask our suppliers in particular to change and work with our customers differently, we couldn't do it if we didn't have the capability built inside first. So we've done a lot of work in the manufacturing and materials management. We still have a long ways to go, but it's helped drive our results. So I'm going to then kind of pull out of all of the things we do a simple way to look at some of the big priorities that we chose that helped drive our results. Show it as this puzzle piece because to me, one of the biggest, one of the most important things is the importance of integration and interdependency of these things. So if we make progress in operational excellence and we are running more efficiently, it impacts other areas like network optimization, or it impacts our ability to change our operating strategy. Each one of these areas impacts the other one, and if we do it in concert, we make more progress than if we work on each one of those individually. So we started really heavily with operational excellence. We made a ton of progress. We've probably got the most savings of all the work we've done out of network optimization. And that is really at a couple of levels. One is taking either equipment or plants out of the system because we built the capability to be able to do that. But it's also getting each plant in the network designed in a way to be as self-sufficient as possible so we're closer to the customer and we can respond more quickly and we eliminate the time that takes to interplant and all the things that I'm sure you all deal with too. But we've made a lot of progress there in network optimization also. On the top box there, visibility and planning, that was, we knew that if we started making progress in these other areas, we had to orchestrate it better. And the two things we worked very hard on and we've made a lot of progress on are S&OP, and that I feel good about. We've got the business fully engaged. The business leaders are owning it with supply chain, managing the process like it's supposed to work, and it's made a big difference. But we also had kind of an antiquated planning system, so we did put in APO, Advanced Planning System, and that was one of the things that hurt us that in the years outside of the index that I'll talk about at the very end. We're out of that now, but that was a very difficult step. We had to take the step, but we could have done that better. So those open up the door for an operating strategy change, which we've been doing. And then finally, common platforms I saved because I want to talk about that as an example because I don't have time to drill down on all these. But we all know what common platforms are and how can you drive more late-stage differentiation. Toyota is a great example of that. I use them as an example all the time when I try to educate people on this. But the way we were really, really complex. If we had 500 types of soup, we had 500 different ways to start them. And we had no common starting point. You know, these numbers aren't right, but we might have had 30 flavors of chicken. The consumer doesn't know the difference between 30 different flavors of chicken. We probably had 15 dice sizes of carrots. I'm pretty sure when people buy a can of soup and they look at it, they don't look at it and say, that's not the dice size I was looking for, right? So, I mean, we created tremendous complexity because I think we rewarded our developers to be unique instead of saying, how do we get a menu that we can work from and create uniqueness starting from some common foundation. So we declared this as a big opportunity, worth a lot of money, not going to get into that. The second bullet point is an interesting one because this is, I do talk about it in a second, that I got to get to fairly quickly, but you know, I do think it's important to declare and to think big. And we talked about this for a little while. We weren't making progress because it's hard to get everybody to line up to the same big priority always because there's so many competing priorities. So, you know, I went forward and said, we're going after this. We need resources to do it. We wanted 20 people to work on this. Set them aside because people doing it within their own job, based day-to-day job wasn't going to work. And there were two things that I had to do. One was self-funded. So I said, we're going to deliver a lot of money, and we're going to start at the beginning of the year, and the first year we're going to pay for what those 20 people and every expense we have, so it's neutral to the P&L. After that, we're going to start letting the money fall to the bottom line. And of those 20 people, we wanted 16 R&D people. And so that was pretty countercultural too, but we were able to move 16 R&D people into this organization to go after this common platform work, working actually for supply chain and redesigning our recipes and our formulas for our products to then work from the very beginning from common bases to getting, you know, simplifying all the type of things I talked about before. And that really worked. It took 3 to 4 years to get through a lot of it. It actually did open up a lot of new ideas as we went through it. The third bullet about simplifying and eliminating non-value add, and you hear the idea about good complexity and bad complexity all the time. This is a great example. This was some of our bad complexity, but we looked at product, process, and then finally the equipment in the plant. We did it in that order. And the product was we started with the principle of quality. We had to make equal or better quality no matter what we did. We were never going to hurt quality. We were going to try to help quality. And in fact, we really did help quality in two ways. By simplifying what we did, we reduced variation incredibly well. And then, but the other thing that we did is we actually changed how we made the product. And if you think about cooking, if you cook soup, if you made your own soup and you cooked it one day hot and you made it in your pan and you put in vegetables and meat and all that and you let it cook for a while, but then you were going to eat it the next day and then you cooked it again, the vegetables wouldn't be as crisp, things would be starting to mesh together a little bit. Well, that's how we made it. We made it, we blended it warm, and then we put it in a can. And we don't just make canned soup, by the way. We make a lot of different kinds of products, but I'm giving this as an example. But then the way you sterilize and make sure the food is safe is you cook that product in the can. We have cookers that we send it through, and that's how you know it's safe for people to eat. Well, by doing that twice, we really hurt our product. So we went to a colder blend operation to start that. And after we did that, we learned also, not learned, but we found that our changeovers were faster because we didn't have to scrape off all the type of stuff that had burnt onto the kettles, and we were able to wash it down and change over fast. All kinds of good things came out of that. So it helped quality, and it helped our ability to cycle faster. The process is we actually eliminated things we didn't need to do, and we simplified the process, which is a little bit of what I just talked about on where we introduced heat. And again, by simplifying that, we're able to move through our products faster and get to a better quality. And then eventually we looked at it and said, geez, we're making this way more efficiently. We don't need the same equipment, and we can simplify our plants. So in the end, we took over a third of all our assets out and still make the same amount of product. Think about that from a maintenance standpoint and from a changeover and from a people who have to be staffed for that equipment. So it made a huge difference in cost and in agility. A lot of expense savings driven through this work. Inventory was reduced and is still being reduced. We have a little bit more to do here. I mentioned some of the examples, but 75% we reduced our die sizes by 75%. Total ingredients that we used to use are down. We reduced 40% of those. And then quality, as I mentioned, were improved. And during the rating period, like I said, we had a lot of other good progress. Safety, environmental, strong service improvement, and reliability. And then cost, we increased our cost savings generation by 30% by going after total delivered cost and by putting in these big breakthrough programs. And our TDC trajectory used to be going up every year. We flattened that out. Not every year. If it was a huge inflation year, that didn't happen, but in general, we were able to do that. And across our whole company, which we haven't applied all these concepts yet, but because of all the work we've done, we've been able to reduce the number of plants by 45% over this period. So some considerations. It's a clear choice to go after big step change versus just being incremental. So I think you got to think big. You also have bigger risk, which we enjoyed a lot of success for the years of during the 06 to 12, I guess it was, for the index. But we also ran into a few problems I'll talk about in 1 second here. And you got to really do good priority setting when you take on these bigger things, obviously, because the organization needs us to do that. So our recent challenges, I mentioned, first of all, we did do some network optimization where we went really big, and we planned it well for the most part, but one of the things that hurts us in the index is inventory, and we took out a big plant knowing that it was going to take us 2 years to get the kind of capacity and flexibility back into the rest of the network, but it paid out. We said, we're going to take the inventory hit, we're going to do this because it was the right thing to do, we know how we're going to get back. It kills us on this index, okay, because that's one of the key factors in the index. We did have some service impacts because we were a little tighter on the capacity to demand ratio than we thought. The major planning system I talked about, so I'm not going to go into that anymore. And then, margin, we don't control all the elements that go into this index. So we've had acquisitions that are high growth, which we're going after, that have a little bit lower margins. That hurts us. We've got caught into the trade investment issue, which I'm sure a lot of companies do. We're going to pull back from that. But these things are things that are not necessarily supply chain driven. So you get good and bad that flow into these variables, and so you can't look at it and say it's all supply chain either way. So my perspective is that we did make good progress during that period, and it showed up where we showed up in the rankings, which was like, okay, that's interesting. Other indexes or ratings might not show us it's there. But what's also interesting is I knew we had problems after that, and we dropped. So you could say, you know, we're a good case study to say that the index does give you a feel whether it's fairly accurate in our case on how we've been doing during those periods. And, but I also would say that we had some problems, but we also made good choices. So in that last set of bullet points, we made appropriate choices on trade-offs, and I'm not going to make those choices to make the rating right. We're going to make them to make money and to win, and they were the right choices. And we'll just have to work our way back up in the ratings and do the right things. And the final thoughts on Campbell is, you know, I think everybody knows this, but people in leadership make the difference, which is where we started. You got to have the foundation right in my mind. I always believe if you don't get the foundation right, you're going to be tripping over problems and being distracted on that all the time and not be able to go after the big things. And when we do go after big things, we've got to be able to take a risk, declare, not just sit in the back and see if it happens, but declare we're going after it. And I believe that's how you get breakthrough results. I think all of us would agree with that. And we got to accept that there's some risk that comes with those bolder actions and deal with it. And we've had to deal with some of that in the last year. So I'm a minute or two over, but that's the quickest way I could tell our story. Yeah.
I think it's a wonderful story. I think Dave's story of leadership, his example of the operating strategy is one of the best examples I've seen in the industry, the building of reliability. And you're one of the few companies, I think, that's really attacked complexity and holistically. And I'd love to just take a couple of minutes for Q&A. I think we can absorb it in the schedule. I'd like to understand, how did you get the mission? How did you get people to endorse you to go after product complexity and more of an end-to-end transformation? How did you do that?
Well, I mean, early on for us, and I think again, I feel like I'm telling people what they know, but I think it depends on the culture. And in our culture, it is a show-me culture, and it was an independent culture at the beginning. So trying to get people together, first of all, on the same page was important. But we also used pilots to demonstrate some of these concepts. And as the results come, the show-me culture also you can leverage. When people see something that's helping them, they rush to it. And so we've been able to get people to move towards it because they see the value of that. The full end-to-end point is we are working on that, but to me it's a forever kind of journey. And we've done a lot of work within the supply chain on end-to-end, and I feel good about that and how we work together. We're just beginning to really go after where I think there's some big money on end-to-end when you think about how promotions drive loss throughout the system, or how do we work with sales, marketing, finance, everybody together to look end-to-end and find some of the big opportunities.
So if you had a magic wand, you got a lot of people in the audience, right? Technologists, consultants, other colleagues that are in other companies. What would you do to imagine the supply chain differently? What do you need help in?
What do I need help in? You know, I think we have a lot to learn. The thing I'm most worried about is I know what I know, and we have great leaders who have had great experiences, and we can see huge opportunities. So we have plenty of work ahead of us, but anticipating what's going to change, you know, with digital supply chain or with some of the global impacts that we heard about earlier, is not, you know, something that we all have experience with. And I think the point was made that nobody's great at forecasting all that. So I really think the biggest watch out for us is to make sure we don't get blinded by what we think we know, and we're looking out ahead and trying to learn and stay out ahead and then integrate those learnings with the work we're already doing.
I think that's great insight. We have time for a couple of questions. Roddy Martin,
Roddy Martin. So Laura made the point in the beginning about the real risks that most companies go through project-based improvement. You come from P&G. P&G had IWS. Does Campbell have a systematized approach to make sure the dots stay connected and you get away from this project-based approach?
Yeah, I mean, we have a similar approach. We don't call it IWS. And, you know, again, people can choose to go very pure on something like lean or TPM or whatever. Because of the mixture, the diversity of experiences we have blended those types of approaches. We're very structured. I showed you one of the pillar type approaches we have, but we're very structured in how we do it. But ours is a blend of those kind of concepts to apply to what we think works best in our culture and to the opportunities that we think we have. We don't have a name for it. We call it some of those things like operational excellence or or our operating strategy, and we blend those together.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, let's give Dave a big round of applause.
Thank
Thank you so much.